Segment 2 with John Jeckovich, World War II veteran. We're reading his book, Their Mother's Sons, and we're on page 171, and that's chapter 7. It's entitled Overseas and Beyond. Did you want me to read these paragraphs or do?
Go ahead, read it.
And what was your dog tag number?
420-965.
Okay. Now we're picking up here. We're after several months of training and a lot of living life to the fullest. You're finally on that luxury liner that was converted to a troop ship, which would hold about 30,000.
Yeah.
And you're below the waterline, and it is tight sleeping quarters. Some of the guys are on the top bunks are only 8 inches from the roof of the cabins, and there's so many people on the boat on the ship that it doesn't have a good odor, and now you're finally able to leave your bunk and go above for fresh air. You're finally able to leave your bunk and go up for fresh air. Do you remember that?
I slept on the deck all the time.
You tell us a little bit about it.
Huh?
Tell us a little bit about it. What did you do up on deck? Did you read or did you just enjoy?
Well, I read during the daytime, and at night I had my shower hat and a sleeping bag, and I slept outside.
When you were outside, did you see any other ships in the ocean?
No, that's a big ocean, Dave. That's a big ocean. I seen them way in the distance.
How about any airplanes?
Airplanes? I seen the RAF and the American airplanes going over there bombing Germany, all that, yeah.
Now let me try to understand this. There's a troop ship, which is about 3 or 4 football fields long, 20 or 30,000 soldiers heading to Europe to go into combat. Was there any other ships protecting the troop ship, or were you out there alone?
There was the Coast Guard was out there, right? The Coast Guard was scattered to zigzag all over the ocean.
So you were pretty.
And what they're worried about is submarines.
And did you have any trouble on your journey, which was a long journey?
No, we didn't get torpedoed or nothing.
But did you have a lot of support ships near you?
Did I see the support ships?
Yeah.
They weren't real close to us. They were scattered all over.
Was it like a big caravan, or what do they call that?
No, they were scattered. It was a combat maneuver.
Were you glad to get off the ship?
Oh yeah, that ship was stinky. That was a limey ship too, but had terrible food.
Oh, so the cooks were from England.
Yeah, greasy food, yeah.
The cooks, it wasn't to your liking.
We had supper at 3 o'clock at night, at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So it must have felt really good to get on land, even though you're into almost German territory.
Yeah. Wow. Couldn't stand it inside. I had to sleep on the deck.
Okay, let me keep reading here. I tried to stay on the deck as much as possible to avoid the sultry conditions below, which were grown worse due to the onslaught of seasickness. So a lot of soldiers got seasick.
Yeah, it threw up all over the layoff.
Did you get seasick?
Huh?
Did you get seasick?
No.
Affecting a large contingent of the troops. I did not get seasick, and most of the people, but I felt wheezy and nauseous whenever I entered the dining area, or I had to spend considerable time below. As we got further out to sea, it became colder on the deck, and we began to look for sheltered spots away from the wind, the ever-present spraying coming over the sides and the bow of the ship. We would bundle up in preparation for going topside, and when we returned below, we would remove most of our clothing except for our underwear to adjust the unbearable high temperatures. Was the high temperatures primarily from the massive diesel engines below you?
Yeah, inside the boat, yeah.
Massive diesel engines.
Yeah, well, there was no ventilation.
And they must have had tens of thousands of horsepower. without saying the constant changing of outerwear was difficult due to the close quarters encountered below.
Took us 3 months to get over.
I had involved somewhat sedate, stoic existence while at home until furious, simulating emotion-laden newness of entering the Army. But I had lost again. I had done on so many previous times, had I lost and forever due to the indecisiveness, was all that I attained denied me once again. We had been at sea for almost 2 weeks, and we were expecting to reach landfall shortly. It had been a restful, thought-provoking interlude, and I enjoyed most of it when I experienced. It gave me ample opportunity to reassess my events of the past month, and the only conclusion that I came up with was that basically I followed my instincts in many situations. Either they were ultimately correct or I felt reasonably comfortably in abiding by them. Here once again I had lost, and in losing I reverted to my old self, which once again was my strength and my well-being. At the Battle of the Bulge, around the beginning of July, the Allies had landed more than 1 million troops, 560,000 tons of supplies, and 171,000 vehicles. By August, they freed Paris and turned east, but the Germans were not ready to give up. They were mounted on their last strike at the Allies through Belgium, and which was known as the Battle of the Bulge, and that's exactly where you were. Because it pushed up a 45-mile wide dent into the Allied lines. When Eisenhower forces broke that offensive too, the march on the Rhine was easy. By 1945, the Nazi strategy had been reduced to the bizarre in an attempt to stiffen German morale. The High Command unveiled an epic movie on the resistance of a small German town and to the invasion of Napoleon in 1807. Kohlberg, which has been created by Goebbels' insistence, was a film with the Hollywood flair. It included 187,000 soldiers who had been borrowed from the front to serve as extras. And at the time when the rail lines were under siege, hundreds of train cars had been commanded to transport salt to set where it become as snow. So Hitler's so crazy at this point, he's trying to make a movie to let everyone know that we still have the German morale, we're going to keep on fighting. And he brought in trainloads of salt to put as a backdrop in his movie to make it look as snow. Even the director was appalled at the excess. Hitler and Goebbels must have been obsessed with the idea that a film like this could be more useful to them than even a victory in Russia. Hitler surrounded his nation rapidly from east to west, and the Germans were pushed through Poland, conveniently passing outside Warsaw that the Germans could finish off the city and make it easier for the Soviets to hold in their palm after the war. And the march towards Berlin from the west, the Allied forces moved deeper into Germany, their eyes on the Elbe River. His nation was a landscape of ruins. Dresden, Essen, Dusseldorf, Nuremberg, Frankfurt, Hamburg, all reduced to rubble. Hitler retired to a concrete bunker at the center of the German capital, the only place where the myth of his destiny remained intact, and he waited for a miracle. The German leader first put his troops in a home army compound of teenagers and old veterans. The only men who had not been drafted later in the death of Roosevelt on April 12, which received as his last bit of news. Perhaps he thought his fortune will change, just as it changed for Frederick the Great in 1762, where his rival was Elizabeth of Russia died, shifting the momentum back to the House of Brandenburg. But of course, the transition to Harry Truman's was smooth, and the Allies remained solid. By April 30th, even Hitler's fanatical optimism had failed him. After a quiet lunch of spaghetti and salad, the Fuhrer and Eva Braun, he had married Braun, his longtime mistress, only a couple days before, walked into his underground suite, closed the door, proceeded to swallow lethal doses of cyanide, and an aide following Hitler's instruction waited until the poison had taken effect and shot him in the head to be sure that he was dead, then helped carry the two bodies upstairs where they laid side by side in the gardens, soaked with gasoline and set afire. Shells from the guns of the invading Russians' army were bursting all around them, while a small group of mourners stood and raised their arms in final salute. Within days, the Germans had surrendered. On the brisk morning, about the 16th day, at sea, we could catch glimpses of land at the far distant horizon. We wondered where we were, and some of the ship's crew informed us they were heading for the southern coast of England, probably South Wales. What did it look like to see that glimpse of land?
Yeah.
How did it feel?
Well, you look at the sea for 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 weeks, and then you look at the land, it's a difference.
It was a good feeling. Late that night, we approached land as everything was blacked out. We could not get a real determination as of an exact location. So you didn't know really where you were, and what happens if you would ask your commanding officers where you were.
They wouldn't tell you.
We were told that we're off the coast of southern Wales, and that way we'd have to sit it out, waiting for the clearance to enter the dock. All the rest of the night and a good part of the next day, we sat outside the port, waiting for a berth to tie down. We did discover that we were eventually docked at Milford Haven. Do you remember Milford Haven?
The what?
Milford Haven. Milford Haven.
Milford Haven.
You remember docking at Milford Haven?
Oh, the city. You're talking about the town, yeah.
Remember.
Milford Haven, yeah.
Which was the southern tip of Wales. The past 16 days were uneventful. Thinking back, there were a respite as well as a reprieve from what lay ahead of us. We did not have an indication of the events that shortly would unfold before us and how they would change our lives forever. We were like lambs being led to slaughter. Minutes?
15.
We were like lambs being led to slaughter. Innocent of what lay ahead of us, inexperienced in the, you can take this, inexperienced in the ways inexperienced in the ways of the war, but eager to learn. Our only recourse was to learn by doing. Our entire troop had been dismantled. The leaders were supposedly trained were suddenly gone, and no one had taken their immediate place. So all the leaders that you knew, the sergeants and lieutenants, now that you're in Europe, they're all gone. The top guys were all gone. They went
yeah.
back to the United States.
Well, we're back in the combat zone now.
Yeah,
Putting out a big show and left.
yeah. Even the lowest level platoon and squad leaders were all drawn for their ranks that they entered into the division just prior to our joining. The entire division was made up of hand-me-downs, ASTP, Air Corps, and new recruits. There was no structure to its makeup, and hence we were doomed for failure. What happened to 106th?
Who?
Tell us what happened to 106th. 106th Division.
106. They got slaughtered. They got slaughtered. They went in first, and then they didn't know what the background was or nothing. Nobody told them nothing. Nobody knew nothing.
Were they trained?
106.
Yeah.
No, they had bad training in the states. They had bad leadership in the states.
So not many of them,
Not many of them left. Not many of them survived.
survived.
What this guy got here?
I don't know, 10th or something.
Got a machine gun.
Yeah, well, you gotta get our guns out, I guess. So the 106th was completely annihilated.
What?
And they're all teenagers. The 106 was primarily teenagers.
So what?
The 106th Division
106?
was primarily teenagers.
Yeah. Well, the poor guys went in first. They didn't know what the hell was going on. Nobody knew the reconnaissance or nothing. They went in cold. And they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They had bad leadership.
Yeah.
All the leaderships were good, like Good Night, those guys, they're all gone. Conde, and they're all gone.
Everyone was heartened and relieved that we'd finally disembark and be able to breathe fresh air again. Also to be able to walk without pitching and rolling. I wonder how it would seem to be walking on land again without the motion of the ship, without the motion of the ship.
Yeah, their body got used to the motion.
How long did it take you to get used to it?
The what?
The motion of the ship, how long, once you're back on land, did it take you to get your bearings straight?
Oh, probably a day. They took us on a 25-mile hike the next day.
All right. As we waited out landing, I thought once again about Anne. These were the last 2 weeks at sea. Somewhat neutral atmosphere gave me a clearer perspective of our relationship. I was firmly convinced that I had botched any future we might have had together, and we would never be going back to what we had during the last several months. I could not attribute any one thing or happening that made me feel this way. The only inkling I kept referring to me was how Anne looked at me the last day we were together. Her eyes were disclosing her true assessment of our situation, and I was certain, as I was corrected in my presumption, she was disheartened at our relationship and did not accumulate into something more substantial. Frankly, I believe her perception was enough to be aware I would not come around to a more mature, realistic understanding of my emotional pain.
Well, he's just getting his window dressing here. When he got here, he almost forgot her. He almost forgot her, or nothing. Yeah, that was a war relationship.
Okay. Luckily, the change in tempo, the moving out of camp, then the shipboard experience, and the movement overseas occupied most of my waking moments. Otherwise, if I stayed in camp, I could not see Anne on a regular basis. I would be completely frustrated and deeply disturbed. In a way, I was fortunate to
She
exit
probably had a boyfriend at home.
What?
She probably had a boyfriend at home.
Well, we don't-
A 4F.
We don't know that. We don't know that. Not at all. We don't know that. In a way, I was fortunate enough to exit the entire scene, for I had no possible real solution to my dilemma. We finally got clearance to berth outside the docking area at Milford Haven in the early evening of our second day at anchor. As previously, when we first boarded the ship, we were again confined to our quarters to await the final docking in order to disembark. The actual withdrawal from the ship was accomplished by deck levels. First to leave was the occupants on the first top deck, as we were the fourth level, and it would take a little bit over 2 hours before we actually began to leave the ship. As we came down the gangplank, we were herded into a 2.5-ton trucks from our journey to the staging area. It was a pleasant relief to smell the night air and get accustomed to walking on land again. Everything seemed strange, nothing like many trips I had taken in the States from camp to camp. It appeared now that we had made good time crossing the ocean, and the higher-ups were caught in not knowing what to do with us, namely, to bed us down for the next several days, and to attempted to untangle the entire mess. I did not have much faith in their judgment because they produced the predicament we found ourselves in. I finally suddenly thought of the Lackland and how simple everything seemed that I never questioned my departure from there. There was complete darkness everywhere, no lights whatsoever. The trucks would pierce the darkness with their blackout lights, which only were tiny slits in their headlights. There was no one to greet us, no large playing band or welcoming committee. Only the MPs directing traffic to get us out of the docking area as quickly as possible.
7 minutes. 7 minutes.
The trip in the open 2.5s did not reveal much of the countryside, as everything was totally blacked out. Traffic outside of the military vehicles was light to non-existent, with only the occasional bicyclist alongside the road. Air temperatures were considerably more moderate what we had left in the Shanks, but the dampness was much more noticeable, and there was dew forming everywhere this early evening. My first impression of England, or more specifically Lake Wales, was totally alien to anything I'd seen before. It was like another world in which reality it was nothing to relate it to. It was so different and new to me that it took all my senses to try to adjust this new and challenging environment. After riding for about an hour, we came upon a blacked out town, proceeded to pull into a rectangular area besides a low-lying building. We were told to leave our equipment in a truck and return to retrieve it shortly. As we entered the building, we were met by the most appetizing aroma I've ever experienced in a long time. This was the mess hall, a company mess hall by the size of it, and it was serving tables with all the serving tables and where all the black troops, cooks helper, and KPs dished out more savory and delectable food imaginable. We had steaks, fried potatoes, baked eggs, and something I'd never seen before, Brussels sprouts.
Right.
Brussels sprouts. He said, "You never seen them before, Brussels sprouts," which were incidentally delicious. And for the dessert, we were served apple tarts with a steamy hot coffee, and we could get down. This is my estimation, was far better than our brass band meeting us at the dock.
5 minutes.
After a leisurely late supper, we made us all feel much better. We are once again on the road. We seem to be going up rather a steep grade on the cobblestone road, which was wide enough only for our trucks, with only a little room to spare on both sides. We drove for a while, and the 2.5 strained as they climbed the grade. We were made an abrupt left turn, maneuvering a tight, sharp corner, which only inches to spare. We were still in the heart of the small town insofar as we could ascertain, in the total blackout conditions prevailing. We came to a sudden stop, which seemed like the middle of a street, as there were houses and cottages on both sides, nestled closely together with their short stoops leading to the front doors. We were told to fall out onto the street and await further orders. Sergeant Whalen informed us that we were billeted here and pointed to a 3-story building to our rear. He also stated that we would take a blanket roll from one of the trailers behind several jeeps that escorted us from the mess hall. We were told to enter the building, find a place to bed down for the rest of the night. What kind of building was that?
Those are old Boy Scout buildings, not Boy Scout buildings, but civilian buildings that use the National Guard. They were old, decrepit. I mean, they were falling apart inside.
So where did you find a place to sleep? Just on the floor?
No, they had aisles of aisleways and railways, steps to go up on the beds. It was a screwed up way of doing it. We only stayed there one night anyway.
In the morning after chow, things started to be sorted out, as we would be briefed of our present situation. Fink came out as the first squad, and we followed him into the building. We were on the first floor and entered the adjoining room as the squads and platoons were dispersed. The building, we found out later, was an old abandoned hotel, which had been neglected until the war broke out several years ago. Since then, it had been occupied by the RAF squadron for a short period, and in subsequent years by the American and Allied forces.
It was an old decrepit building anyway.
Appraisal of the present condition, not much has transpired in the way of retrofitting this building for the future use. Minutes?
Just under 2.
It had a musty, damp odor and cremated and encroached throughout the entire structure. The so-called squad rooms were rather small and square size and shape. They accommodated 6 men, 2 men, and 3 double bunks.
Then they had to put up a fire watch.
Really? How come?
Well, there were little stoves every 25, 30 feet in the aisle in the building, and they had to keep the people watch the stove so they wouldn't burn the damn house down.
Wow.
Is that how they heated it?
Huh?
I don't know, is that how they heated it?
Those were the little stoves in the middle of the aisle.
Oh, wow.
There was no central heat. You had to keep people watching that all night because they're burning the damn place down.
So did you have to sit there for a while?
Huh?
Did you have to do that?
Oh yeah, you're on one fire watch detail.
Minutes?
50 seconds. That's interesting.
The bunks were makeshift affairs with wooden slots across their width, which substituted for springs. These held the badly stained mattress covers, mat ticks they were referred to as, which were stuffed with ancient dried up straw. The very smell of them got me to be itching and sneezing.
Oh, awful.
That must have been awful.
Yeah, 20
That's
seconds.
straw, yeah.
And were they very comfortable, John?
Well, you weren't bed there for comfort.
Yeah. Sweet.
That place was 50 years old to begin with.
Wow.
Yeah.